Okay.
Yes.
I'd like to call the the December 9th, 2022 Geneva IDA meeting to order. Thank you everyone for being here. I'd like to, we need to have approved the minutes from the previous meeting too, right? We didn't do that last time. Could we? Have a quorum?
Yes.
Okay. We'll get bring to the table a motion to approve both the October and the November meeting minutes. Have a motion, please.
I'll make the motion.
RJ, second, Rick. Any discussion, correction? Everyone looked at them, pretty straightforward information. All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, so moved, thank you. The financial report from November, Tracy. Like to see what that looks like.
Okay. We wasn't much activity in November. We got our normal monthly payment from Downtown Winery, some interest income. I did just receive a bill from Harris Beach, but it might be dated December. Oh no, it was November 15th. So that'll be added in. I just got that the other day in the mail. So, but otherwise, no activity in November.
Okay, I'd like a motion to approve the financial report. Jason, all second. Any questions? Any discussion? All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. So passed. All right. Maureen, you're up first for your report of the city school district. What do you have for us today?
Good morning, everyone. Thanks for having me. It's been, we're gearing up. It's getting busier here at the school district. We had a lengthy meeting yesterday with our architects and our capital project, and we're still waiting on state aid approval from that. They're giving us, they actually, long story short, is that they actually made a mistake on something. And when we make a mistake, we're held accountable. But when the state makes a mistake, all is forgiven. And they've given us the wrong numbers for 5 years that we were using something called building aid units. Every building is assigned a building aid unit depending on how many students are there and the size of the building and stuff. And that has affected this capital project. But we're hoping to negotiate a settlement with them and move forward with it. Right now, they're disallowing our roof replacement at the or they're saying they won't aid our roof replacement because they made a mistake on our numbers. But I'm really just telling you that because we all deal with the state and municipalities in one capacity or another. And sometimes you win and sometimes you lose. I'll report back. I'm hoping we win. I'm hoping that we'll be able to prove our case pretty easily. But beyond that, so we'll be going out for bids soon, hopefully in February is what our plan is, for $27.5 million worth of construction. Actually, it's a little less than that, about $24 million worth of construction. Construction is starting in May, believe it or not. Some of the parking lots over at West Street they're all going to be revamped. We have recently met with the city and the fire department concerning the West Street school, the traffic concerns on West Street, because it's a one-way street. And there'll be some more information coming out on that soon. We've asked the city to consider, the city rep couldn't be there that day, but we've started to have conversations with perhaps changing the direction of that one-way street of West Street to alleviate. It's a serious safety concern. It's pretty shocking to see the video of students trying to get out and parents trying to get in. I think all of us, whether we have children or not, would recognize the seriousness of it. So, and beyond that, in addition to that, we are working on an initiative. We've been asked to study whether moving our second graders back from North Street, back to the West Street school, and then moving the Head Start program from West Street to North Street makes sense. And so a committee of about 40 district employees and community members, Head Start people, all have been working hard to make sure that we understand all of the pros and cons of that And I believe that the superintendent is going to be making a report to the board this coming Monday night. We have our board meeting Monday night at 7:30 p.m. at the high school.
Okay, thank you, Maureen. Any questions, Maureen? Well, again, thank you for joining us. We
Thank
appreciate
you.
it.
I'm going to stay on for a few minutes and then I'll jump off. I have another meeting to go to.
All right, very good. Thank you. Miles, you're on the phone there?
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning, Miles. How's the GEDC going?
Yeah, things are getting ready, gearing up for winter and the beautiful snow that will be upon us in some form shortly. And we talked about having some space leased up by our next meeting. It is still in progress. There are 2 leases out right now, and there's a couple tenants that are existing that are switching some space and also adding to their current footprint. So there's we should have, by the next meeting, we should have at least 1 new tenant in and waiting for another tenant to vacate some space so that we can market that properly. And I think I have someone in the wings for that as well. So otherwise, pretty calm, but we should have something signed for one of them, before Christmas for sure.
Great. Again, thank you for sending in the reports. It makes it a lot easier for us. Any questions of Miles while we have him on the phone? All right. Miles, thank you for joining us. Have a nice holiday and we'll talk to you next year.
You as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks.
Okay, the GEDC committee met recently. Tracy, you have a report on what they heard. Thank you for sharing the minutes of that meeting.
Yeah, so we got some really good insights from the folks to the tour of the building. And at the end of the meeting, basically, the consensus was that the most logical next step is to seek some additional information. So get some additional studies, get a floor plan. All of these things are going to be helpful regardless of whether the idea is to keep the building, sell the building, partition off the building, sell part of it, keep part of it, whatever. So we discussed pursuing floor plans and phase 1 environmental and a building condition or roof condition assessment. I think were the 3 that were the most critical, if I recall correctly. It sounds good. Sounds good. Sounds good. And Craig did get a quote for floor plans, but the quotes for the other 2 assessments didn't come through in time, I guess. I guess he was working with someone that ended up getting the flu, and then he had to pivot, and there was, I don't know what happened, but we weren't able to get quotes for the other 2 components. But there is 1 quote that came through for floor plans that I sent out yesterday from Hale.
Yes.
And what are these letters here? Okay. And this is like a 3D scanning and floor plan creation. It was a little bit steeper than I anticipated. The estimated total was $20,500 from Hale. We can consider this today, or if you'd like, we can go and look for some other quotes and see kind of where this falls with some other potential quotes. And then we'll still be awaiting quote for the environmental assessment and roof condition.
On that survey, what's the goal? Get footprint, room heights, windows, that kind of thing?
There are not currently any kinds of floor plans, like professional floor plans, like we have basic room sizes, but yeah, the intent is to get a full set of as-built floor plans.
There's an option is to do it the old-fashioned way, is to have a boundary survey. I assume we have one already.
I don't think we even have that.
Okay, I think we need that. But then they would do the building corners and they would be precisely located. So from that, and even door locations, so surveyors will do that. And any protrusions or anything that's in the way. And then you could have them go inside after the floor or the footprint is done, go inside and measure every room. They have, you don't necessarily need to set up the 3D imaging unless you really want that level of detail. I don't know, do you want that level of detail? If you do, then this is the way to go.
Yeah, but the quote separated out the 2D floor and roof plans, right? I don't know, I don't understand the quote completely.
Well, so I think that these items, these tasks build upon each other to a certain extent. This is one way, obviously, of doing a floor plan, but I don't know that it's like you can just pick the $6,000 2D floor plan. I think
They're added,
that's
isn't it?
based upon the scanning that they do.
So that's the $6,000 is actually, you got to do those 3D before you get to 2D.
Right, so that's why it might be worthwhile to take a look at a firm that might go a more traditional route of
Tape measure.
using a laser
You
and,
should see what they have though. You can just hold a little
Yeah.
little
Yeah.
cigarette case size
Yeah.
device, and it just gives you to a tenth of
Yeah,
an
yeah,
inch.
no, it's pretty fast.
Just boom, 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 you got it.
Due to the cost of this proposal, are we required to get at least 3 proposals?
this is professional services, so we actually don't have
We have
to.
2, okay.
You could say, okay, yeah, we do want this level of detail. The only way to get it is a 3D laser scanning. And as such, we're gonna do this. But since we would need 3 if we were talking about construction. But as a professional service, that's exempt.
Everyone okay waiting till next month? So
I think it might be interesting though to check out a surveyor just to tell them what we're looking for. I mean, to get a ballpark or at least something from them. What could you do for us in terms of this and to what degree, not just the outside, but even the inside? I mean, you know, I think Lowell's right. It'd be interesting to see what a comparison might be. I still don't think that will be cheap either. I mean, you're not gonna look, you know, cheap either there. So this may actually, you know, be pretty good, but maybe we should, you know, at least check that out.
I suspect it might be about half.
What is this 3D going to tell you that's going to help inform the decision versus an old schematic floor? I think that's what solution are you trying to get with this?
Right.
And that might be the committee's discussion.
Yeah, and I will say that Craig said that having this level of detail is going to speak volumes, and it's something that we've really never had with the GEDC. He felt that this would be a really great starting point. I don't know if Miles, you have anything else to say, if like this level of detail is what this offers us versus a more traditional methodology, but Miles even still there. Oh, yeah.
But of course, the surveyor's not gonna be able to give you the information on the roof.
Right.
And those things.
Yeah.
Such.
I think my brother touched on it, that level of detail will help, you know, from a, you know, creative standpoint or from a, you know, even a schematic standpoint, because that building was at one time, right, it was just one business that flowed together, kind of was open, and now it'll show, you know, the cut ups a little better, the suites a little better. I mean, there are some basic floor plans, but they're very rudimentary.
For the purpose of what we're looking into though is, I think the matter at hand is for us to go out and get an understanding or an appraisal on what the building's value is and what it would go to market for. Okay, so for us,
Correct.
the inspections are important, the assessments are important. As far as the beyond that, I don't necessarily know that we need those files for an appraisal. Now, once we get the appraisal and we talk to a professional commercial realtor and we understand what the value is and what the market demand is, then they can tell us, hey, look, it's kind of like, you know, fluffing your home when you're going to go ahead and sell it, right? Do we need all these other pieces of information to go ahead and help with the sale? But we might get into an assessment or an inspection and find out there's, you know, more concerns that we have to deal with. So I wouldn't necessarily go with the design files until we understand what the the inspections results are, and then potentially look towards the appraisal before we make these types of investments.
Is,
So that would give us time if we,
Absolutely.
yeah.
and we're just doing a phase one environmental, not phase
That's,
two.
I mean, that's a good starting point. That at least gives us a sense of what might be there. And then you can make a decision about whether a phase two is what you want to do at this juncture.
It'd be tough. Particularly with the
and
history, I mean,
I will say that there is money available for a phase two, but it's through the CFA, so the timeframe on getting funding for that is pretty long at this point. There is also funding available for various types of real estate and planning studies. Again, part of the CFA process, so.
but any grant or anything that we try to get funding for, you can't fund stuff that we've already paid for, right?
Correct.
So we can't go ahead and pay for and apply for the grant to cover it.
Yeah, so, but it is something to think about, is that the CFA process is gonna be coming up. It's gonna be due in July, it always is. So these studies can help set us up for, is there something we do want to apply for funding for? Whether that's a phase two or a master site plan or floor plans. That's just something to keep in the back of our minds, that funding, because it's in a BOA, would be available as part of the CFA process.
Are we collecting quotes on a phase one?
Craig was working on it and just hasn't gotten it. It sounds like just hasn't gotten it back yet. So we'll continue working on that. I'll report back to the committee between now and the next meeting. So unfortunately, I don't know that we're going to have any kind of a solution by the January meeting, because obviously we won't have this stuff done. So,
Okay.
but we'll keep working on those quotes to make sure that
That's
we're
good.
ready for an approval at the next meeting.
You don't often know, you want to go to a phase two unless the phase one perpetrators, they say, hey, you need more studies. And then they tell you if you need a phase two. So we don't just automatically jump to it.
Pretty sure. I mean, that was, that was a machine shop for 60 or 70 years.
We're not lucky in that
Yeah,
area
yeah.
at all, at all.
We haven't done well.
Trying to assist.
So we'll keep working on this and make sure that we're ready with some quotes at the next meeting.
Okay. Craig, do you have any comments since this is your building?
You're welcome.
He's bought it already.
You bailed.
Checked out. Okay.
Check it out there.
Good.
I think it's just Miles on the phone. I don't think Craig is.
No, I didn't say, I said Craig, I'm sorry. Yeah, Miles. I guess
I
not.
guess not.
Okay, we'll move on.
I
Okay. All right, city council report, Amy?
Yes, so not a lot from city council in this area at this point. We do have a ESD application potentially going in, a public hearing at the January meeting for Pretzel Logic. I know that they had reached out to Tracy about the relationship with the IDA, and would the IDA be supportive or at least acknowledge that the move would be positive for the community. They would be moving into the CCN building. That's what's in this. So they'll be going over to Middle Street. It would allow for 13 to 15 additional employees, more space. So that council has gone ahead and said yes at the public hearing. They want to review the application prior to submittal, which would happen at that January meeting. So they are working on that. I think that is the main driver. Last night, the Business Improvement District did have their retreat. And I think one of the pieces that came out of that is encouraging the bid LBC IDA to be more collaborative in ways. Where are we overlapping? And I think Tracy's going to talk about the bid proposal as well. So I think there's some efforts there from all three entities, having attended all three of the meetings. Often that comes up. So I think that's a positive piece to that. I think that is it at this point. Zoning is still ongoing. That will go to council. I'm hoping early part of next year. These revisions will be going through council. I can't say that they will be adopted immediately, but they'll be going there.
Okay. Any questions, Amy? Thank you for attending.
Mhm.
All right, Tracy, the IDA projects that we have currently.
Not much to report. We're continuing on with the conversation around some sort of a hospitality tax. Jason and I are gonna touch base after this meeting about that. Just kind of looking through what the opportunities are and, what the next steps might be, as well as what is currently happening with the city's
It's room occupancy.
room occupancy tax. Thank you.
I was gonna say it's
I
been
couldn't
in
come up
some
with an
communities,
occupancy.
in others. Yes.
And so that's an ongoing conversation. No updates on Trinity. I did talk to, this is kind of getting towards the environmental services update, of which there is not much of one. But I did talk to the potential buyer, anxiously awaiting news as we are. And
It's a development for Gateway.
yes,
Yeah, okay.
yeah, for the Gateway parcel. And then not much else to report on IDA projects. I did get one inquiry from UPS over on Forge Ave, just kind of looking for some ideas, no incentive discussion at this point, just looking for some ideas about nearby properties. And so I've been engaging with him, but nothing to be done here.
The city owns the Market Basket property, is that correct? Yeah. Might be an option.
It's a clear site now, right?
Yeah,
There's some specific things that they're trying to accomplish, and they need to stay very tight into where they are.
Oh, I see. They want to stay. Okay. Okay, unfinished business. We have I think included in the packets from Plumley Engineering, the environmental services update. Now, this was necessary to do so that we can write that new letter to the GEDC. Some additional information was gathered on the site investigation. So, Tracy?
Yeah, so this is actually regarding Gateway. And this was the contract that had been approved to do the updated submission to DEC for that parcel. Because of the way that kind of played out, the actual costs ended up being higher than what was originally approved, which is why I wanted to bring it back to this group to approve this invoice before we paid it. Just so that you're aware that this went over budget, and that's because they did the original plan, and then we had someone look at it, and then they basically reworked the whole thing and did some additional.
What did we originally approve? 15?
We originally approved a total of something like, I think it was 30. And I'm sorry, I don't have these numbers all in front of me. And I think this brings it up. We're about $10,000 over on this particular bill, brings us to about $10,000 over what was originally approved.
Are we sharing this with the LDC?
Yes,
But we're paying it, and they're going to reimburse us at closing.
it all shakes out at closing. Yeah.
Okay. We have money, they don't. So it's part of it. Okay. I'd like a motion to approve this invoice.
So moved.
Second.
Irene, second. Any discussion? Any more information needed?
Just a quick thing, it's based on the DEC's comments on what they wrote the first time.
It was based on the review we had done. Wendy went back and looked at it, and she provided some comments and ended up reworking the entire submission before it went to DEC.
I forget what did
Wendy
do?
Marsh, she's an environmental attorney.
Oh, okay, so it was internal, it wasn't a submittal to the DEC.
Correct. Yeah, internally we made a shift.
Right. Can we
And that the shift was to get approval quickly.
try to get it, no, to close it out? There was,
She felt there was some things that missing.
if you went back in and reorganized the submittal.
Yeah, so the plan that they originally put together was a remediation plan. It was a proposal for how to remediate the soils. And then after reviewing it, someone who knows what they're talking about reviewing it, we made a shift to saying, let's we have new information now. We know some of the original request was not accurate.
Right.
So let's resubmit a request to close the spill record as opposed to submitting this very expensive remediation measure, which will short-term solve the problem, but probably not long-term solve the problem.
Sounds a little bit like the consultant humbly mistakenly took a tact that didn't work.
So they took a tack that aligned with what we asked them to do, and then it ended up not being what seemed best in the long term for
Oh,
us.
okay.
Once we took another look at it and asked somebody else to take.
Yeah, it's just a little hard to just automatically approve what could be construed as kind of a mistake.
I mean, it could be construed that way. They did what we asked them to, and then we did what we wanted.
And we got 3 quotes on the arena that they just wrote what needed to be done, and we got 3 quotes on the work itself. And that's the part that was ridiculous.
Was there like a change order to this, or like, how does that work?
Not officially, there was not an official change order to it. The contract does say, like, if, you know, we're gonna bill you time and expense, this is our estimated amount. It does say that we'll let you know if it seems like there's a significant change to the billing amount.
That's a 33% increase, right?
Yeah,
So that's a significant number.
I was surprised. I did know that they had changed gears and that we had asked them to do something different than what they originally provided. So I expected that it might go a little bit over. I did not expect it to go this far over.
Okay, so if we have the original cost, and it was at time and material, right? And they allocate labor hours and such. And then when the scope of work changed, I'm assuming that there's an additional invoice for the additional scope of work. How does that measure up with regards to the labor hours? I mean, are we talking about they did 50 hours this time and they did another 50 hours? Or are we talking about 50 hours and it was 10 hours to change? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I mean, we do have a layout of their time that they expended. Each invoice comes with a full outline of the time that they expended. I have not done the math to say how much did you spend on this
Right.
plan and how much time did you spend on the secondary plan.
Yeah, I would just say that while we're surprised at 33% increase, would they be equally surprised if we said we don't want to pay a 33% increase? You know what I mean?
Mhm.
And that's fair. And there's reciprocity in that, and just understanding that we don't have to go ahead and just take it because that's what was given to us. I mean, I feel like even in any time and material situation, you're probably going to be 10 to 15% leeway. 33% seems like a whole lot of money.
Yeah, but we so I agree. I was a little disappointed that this was not communicated up front.
Right. And
When I
which,
got the bill. However, I do understand why this happened.
okay,
I do understand that they provided a deliverable. That was what we asked for. And then we told them actually make a new one. And that's what happened.
but without giving us a quote for what that new one is, like what
Yeah,
the
we-
additional is. So we just
And
didn't
I think
ask for it.
yeah,
Okay, I understand.
I think some of this is because we ended up with Wendy in the mix. Some of those conversations maybe didn't happen in the most streamlined fashion.
There was some buried debris that they thought was a gas tank. They picked up magnetic imaging or whatever they do. And Wendy said, why don't you dig it up to find out? And we paid $800, I think it was, to dig that up.
Yeah, to
And then it-
confirm. But
Yeah.
they did show up. So Plumlee did go to the site that day. They spent a few hours on the site that day with.
So this overcharge is not associated with that second set of.
It's both. It's both. Yeah.
Okay.
It's both that they spent time at the site that day when we were doing that investigation and completely rewriting what they had
The
submitted.
environmental said it could be gas tanks. And she said, let's not guess, dig them up. And they were actually part of a collapsed tank and a water heater or something like that was buried from when they took out the foundation. So then based on that discovery, that's how she rewrote the letter to the DEC saying that whatever's on the property migrated from across the street. It didn't originate, and they closed DEC closed that out. So because that case is closed, based on that, we should be able to close our case. So it was a good legal strategy. It's unfortunate that I don't know that we could have got there without having this first step done.
Yeah, but I definitely see the point. I do wish that we had kind of that heads up, and perhaps that I had asked for, okay, what does this mean cost wise?
Well, it's on them too. I mean, the transparency of doing business with anybody is equally important. So it's not just us asking the questions. If they know the information, they should share it. You know what I mean? And
I agree.
whenever we're choosing to do business with anyone, we want to make sure that everything's on the table. The work's been done. I mean, it is what it is, but you know, we can learn from it. So.
It'd be bad though to refer back to them, that became a discussion here and a concern, and that, you know, even though we did ask for more, it would have been business-wise, a good practice for them to come back and say, okay, understand it's gonna cost blah, 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 X, Y, Z. So I think if we can communicate that to them, that, you know, they have a responsibility to get to us as well as us maybe asking for that. That wouldn't be a bad thing to say.
Yeah, I've
Okay.
alluded to that already, and then I will specifically say that the board discussed.
The board
that.
discussed that,
Yep.
so at least they know. So for any future situations, you know, so it's a good.
Do you want to just vote on this now, and if, you know, we have concerns, we'll just pass it to next month.
Yep, I do have a motion and a second already, so.
All in favor to pay this invoice, say aye. Aye, or no? Okay, we are gonna pay it then? I thought-
Yep.
okay. All right, I thought it was going the other way.
Did anybody say
I saw
no?
that thing going this way.
I was close to saying no.
I'm a no, but I mean.
Okay,
Well,
There's enough eyes.
that's what,
Right.
well, we can, okay, well, let me start again.
yeah.
All in
Gotta
favor
say
of,
both.
yeah, I didn't get a chance. I was surprised by a what? I thought we were, okay. Well, I could change them. Well, we have a motion, I guess.
Got 'em.
All right. All in favor of paying this invoice sent performance from Plumley Engineering, say aye. All opposed, say
Nay.
aye. Nay, okay, nay, how many nays? Three?
Just one.
Just one.
Yay.
The volume of.
Okay.
Let me give you half. I've been in that position before where I would charge ahead knowing that there's a change. But usually you look for a way to
Explain it.
when you've already gone over. Okay, you follow me? So you've gone over budget, you can't bill it, but here's an opportunity to bill it plus the next thing I have to do. So they now do not go over budget.
Right.
It's a little irritating because it's tough because I've been in that situation.
I understand.
You know, okay.
I understand.
And just so you guys know, I mean, the only reason I vote this way is because if this was my money, I would ask more questions and I would want some sort of olive branch from them to say, hey, look at, you weren't as transparent. So I'm letting you know that I'm not satisfied and how can we move forward from this? And maybe there is, you know, an opportunity for them to offer a gesture of goodwill, but you know, if it was my money, that's what I would.
All right, move on.
Move on.
We'd like to go into an executive session right now.
Yeah, I'm
Is that
wondering,
still-
should we do these last three items first and then?
Absolutely, new business and then go close out so we can close off the, okay. New business, the Nardozzi land sale. I see that James is not here, or nor did he contact you?
Nope.
Okay. So the motion to purchase to amend the purchase contract, where do we sit with that, Tracy?
Yeah, so the current purchase contract ends end of the year. And we need to do something with it because we're not going to close by the end of the year. And currently on the contract, there are contingencies, particularly the most critical one in question is around him receiving a site plan approval. And he would like to remove that contingency. Generally speaking, the executive committee is okay with that, but we've not.
The city is not, by the way. Yeah.
And yeah, but there are reasons why it would be helpful to have that done before we transfer title. But that's what he's requesting. Since our last discussion, we reached out to him and say, okay, if we're going to remove the contingency, we want to have a timeline for when your site plan is going to be done and have a condition in the sale that we can take the property back if you don't meet these milestones. We did not get a response from him on this. So at this point, the options are to let the contract expire or to do a like a short-term extension to allow more time to negotiate the terms of the sale contract. If you were going to do that, I would include a stipulation that any work that he does on that site is code compliant so that we can hold him accountable for anything that's happening on the site while it's still under our name. The current contract is a little fuzzy in this area. So we want to make sure that there's really teeth there so that should he is doing work on the property that he doesn't own, and technically the IDA is responsible for that. So if we're going to do any type of an extension to allow conversations to continue, I would suggest putting a little more stronger language around any work that he's doing on the site and making sure that that's compliant with code and site plan processes.
He has to sign the extension, right?
He would need to sign the extension. Otherwise, the contract's going to expire. So it's possible that'll happen anyway. And then the other item to address is that there is one very tiny little 0.2 acre parcel that we don't have clear title to at the moment. Bob Ryan at Harris Beach is working on that to try to clear that up. But right now we're actually not in a position to sell it because we actually don't know that we own it. So we actually need to remove that from the contract. From a price perspective,
It's 15,000. I think it was very low.
yeah, so the current contract is $115,000. Removing this, if you just do a per acre price, it would reduce it to $113,444.
I thought that second parcel we did at a reduced rate because it needed so much full. Do you have the original? Is there any way to see that? I don't know if I have it. Do you remember that? It was the one was, you know, parcel he's putting the building on was more money than this parcel, which is just essentially going to be auxiliary parking. And I thought it was something like 15,000 for that amount for that lot, and then the other one was like 135 or whatever.
Oh, so all three parcels over there.
Oh, I see.
Versus total.
Oh, I see. I thought it was only two. So you're saying the part that we don't have ownership of is a small part of the part over by Zotos or?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so over by Zotos, I think there's three parcels. This is just one of them.
Got it. Okay.
But if that whole three parcel section was 15,000, that would mean there's really not much of a
Correct.
price effect of taking out this little piece.
But it would have to be surveyed and stuff, right, to get a subdivision.
It's not, it's already its own parcel.
It's already a
So
subdivision.
there's no subdivision necessary. So I mean, we could just say like, we're taking out that parcel and now instead of 115, it's 114.5. Or we could just leave it at 115 and see what he says.
Either 150.
Okay.
I think so.
But I think that tightening up on the contract is important. The way he's using it, you know.
But certainly it
I
was
like
not the
the whole-
intention.
As always, I mean, I'm just got such a knee-jerk reaction to the environmental part. I don't want him doing something there that, you know, that's gonna, that all of a sudden, okay, the deal's off, he's leaving, and then we're left with an environmental issue again. I just have such a knee-jerk reaction to anything because for the many years that we've been dealing and on the wrong side of environmental issues that
Right.
is something in there,
There's
the
a
effect of
wetland, there's
code
wetlands. right
and
behind there.
environmental aspect of it. I don't know. I just.
Okay, so I'd like a motion to amend the purchase contract or actually let's discuss what the extension would be first, and I'll put it in the motion.
Yeah, so what I said to him is if we don't hear from you by December 8th, we'll consider, I didn't say we would do, I would say we would consider a 3-month extension. So that's kind of where we left it with him. We've not heard anything from him. So that's what I'm throwing out there.
So then, so in the 3-month extension would still enforce the building from site plan approval from the planning board.
Yep.
Which is quite a bit of work to do. I don't know if he's initiated that. My last conversation with him, I showed him, I said, you have to do this. And which he didn't want to do until he owned the property, which, because he said he couldn't get financing until we can get financing contingent on all sorts of things. So that's,
Yeah.
that's not correct. And then that it has to be brought up to, by closing, what would the wording look like for the environmental part?
Would be 3-month extension with all the existing contingencies, plus removal of this 0.2 acre parcel, plus compliance with any and all code and zoning regulations or work happening on the premises.
Okay, that's the motion. And he just,
What's wrong with him getting site plan?
what's that?
What's wrong with him preparing a site plan so he can get
He didn't want to spend the money until he owned the property. So he told me. He says, well, I want to make sure I can close and get, so it's, almost everyone does site plan approval before they
Yeah.
close. I mean, it's just, in fact, some banks require it,
Right.
that you get that first.
We want to know what it is.
So, so he's putting,
A little tough because he continues to work on it, right? Does work on the site. That's usually unheard of.
I mean, I would prefer that he stop all work on the site. Like, I would rather him not be doing anything over there.
it's not actually, what he's doing is he's collecting debris, stuff off the roads that he does and sidewalks. And there's a mountain there that he says he's going to grind up and uses to level the lot. Both lots on both sides of Doran. And that's why he's been putting it there. Along with parking his trucks and stuff. He did do some fill in there, and that was part of the original contract, but that original contract goes back over a year and a half. And it was supposed to be like a 3-month period, and then that got delayed, and then that's where we give him an extension to the end of the year.
So you've already given one extension.
Yep.
Now you're asking to give him another. Is that what we're saying?
That's the option right now,
Yeah.
based on having not heard anything from him, is we can consider extending it or we can let it expire.
Well, he'll continue to extend it until you give him firm deadlines. I mean, why not? I mean, that's what I would do if you're going to keep extending it. So I think that if you've already made an extension to a certain date, you hold to that date, and that's when it stops. I mean, that's the only way you're going to force anybody to go ahead and make a decision. Either he's going to go or he's not going to go. And the only way he's going to do that is when he has a decision to make. Right now, he doesn't have a decision to make. He just has the ability to keep on doing what he's doing. We haven't given him a decision. So I think you need to, in my opinion, I guess, hold firm on whatever it is that you guys agreed to the first time.
And if it expires, there's always the opportunity to renegotiate. But then just one thing to consider with letting it expire is then the site as it is right now becomes yours again, full bore.
It's going to cost us money to clean it up.
He doesn't have the responsibility for
I mean-
leaving it as he.
It's not in the, I don't think.
Well, so he would have to return it to the condition. I believe in the contract, he has to return it to the condition that he found it. The question is whether or not he'll do it. And in what time frame he'll do it. And what that means for the IDA.
Well, I think if I'm a local business person and I want to, do business with the city, or I want to do business with city organizations, I'm going to make good on it. Because, I mean, he's had significant contracts for 5 and 20 and everything else he's done around here. So it's in his best interest to do the right thing.
He made comment to that. He says, I live here. I don't want to, I'm not going to do anything.
Yeah, no, it just, listen, everybody gets busy. His time is valuable to him, but we need to go ahead and make sure that he understands how valuable our time is too. So let's go ahead and, kind of draw the line in the sand on that one. So that way you can make a decision. In my opinion.
You could say we haven't heard from you, obviously. So what are our option is to let it go.
We're not the bad guy in this. I mean, he knows what the rules are for what the agreement was. I mean, why do we always feel like the bad guy in this, right? Like this was the deal. So adhere to the deal, or this is what happens next. It's step 2.
Any other comments?
And that if he does get back and wants to go to any extension offered, it's going to include that site plan being done.
See, what is it
For
that you
sale.
offered him? You said, if I don't hear from you by this date, then I'll assume you want a 3-month extension.
Pretty much, yeah.
So you've already given him
I said
Oh.
that.
A verbal,
No,
No, number.
I said this is what the board will consider.
oh,
I did not tell him that's what he would get.
okay, so the option is there.
What we suggested a month ago, at least a month ago, is that if he could offer us a timeline to say, okay, yes, I need a little bit more time and come and present his case. Which first we said, at least give it in writing, and secondly, a joint come to the meeting. And those two things obviously haven't happened. So I think, to speak to Jason's point, we have given him opportunity to follow through on this, whether he's busy or not. If this is important, he'd attend to it. And
If it was his business, he wouldn't offer extensions. I mean, he's done work at my house. He's a great guy, does great work. I just think that when it comes to business, you have to have rules and you have to go ahead and follow those rules. And he understands that. He knows that.
So specifically, what I wrote to him was, if we do not hear from you by close of business 12/8, the IDA will consider extending the purchase agreement as written for 3 months to allow additional time for discussion and negotiation. So that consider basically says this is what we'll talk about, but
okay, are we ready to vote? Any more discussion? Do we have a motion on the table to extend it to 3 months as Tracy outlined? Or not? All in favor, say aye.
Wait a minute, what are we voting?
we would actually need a motion in a second too.
Well, you did. I thought I started the conversation with the motion. We can do that. All right, motion to amend the purchase contract per Tracy's 3 stipulations, the 3-month extension, the site stabilization, whatever you want to call that. Yeah, the site and the existing conditions be held in place, which includes essentially the site plan approval before closing.
And removing the 0.2 acre parcel.
You're removing the 0.2. Yeah, that was the third one. Okay. So I'd like a motion. Is that not clear? I'm moving my way through that one.
So moved.
Okay, second.
Second.
All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All in favor to, all opposed, say nay. Nay. All right, nays take it. We're not extending the contract. And we're going to, so will you let him know that? And that he has to, do you know what our next steps are?
Also,
Once this date passes, what we do? I mean,
So Bob Ryan is working on this. So I'll coordinate with him. I actually haven't even read the purchase and sale agreement, so
yeah, so
we'll
what
touch base with Bob.
will happen, I'll reach out to Bob before I reach out to James, but the contract will expire, and if he wants to continue pursuing the land, he'll need to renegotiate a new purchase agreement if this is allowed to expire. And
that's right. So good. So we can, yeah,
and
okay.
he would need to return the parcel to its original state.
Right, okay. So we'll make that clear in whatever communication. Okay. All right, any more discussion about this? We're good. All right. MRB contract discussion.
Yeah, so this is just a heads up that the MRB's contract runs through the January meeting. So what you'll see at a January meeting is an updated proposal for 2023. We anticipate that sometime during that year, there will be a director of economic development and planning, but that is not currently like imminent. So the idea is that what we'll do is create a new proposal to help continue carrying on administrative functions, but that will also allow for us to help transition someone new into this role during the course of the year. So it'll be somewhat flexible and to meet the needs of what's happening with city leadership and staffing transitions. We anticipate what we'll do is probably a monthly figure. It is going to be more than what we proposed for this year based on how this year went, but will include kind of the month-to-month administration, a certain level of research and work in between that we know is pretty typical for the IDA. And then there'll be something like a general services line. So when something pops up that maybe we didn't anticipate, we have a function for addressing that with the billing.
A good example of that is we decided late in this year that GDC we're going to form an ad hoc committee to study that we should pay them for their time to do that. So So if it's kind of above and beyond the administrative of that, also when we get a project, a pilot constitutes quite a bit of work. We could try to reclaim some of those costs in the closing. We have legal fees, we can also have administrative fees. So as a pilot comes up, we might be able to mitigate some of but these projects are projects and it's not actually the day in and day out operation of the organization. So met with Tracy and Matt, Dave Linger and I from LDC met because they're in the have the same boat, and Amy was there and they discussed this. It was actually earlier this week, and they discussed how going forward it would be. And I want to bring up another issue. Obviously, this year they did things did pop up that required their attention. Of the executive committee, Nick, Irene, and I met actually 2 months ago now. We didn't do it last month. We'd like to. We're recommending that we fund some of the shortfall, and it's only about a third of the shortfall. Their override was. At this point, did you have a new number? I mean, it was a couple months ago that you did this.
Yeah, a couple of months ago, it was about 25,000. We were over, and that was.
So we're suggesting somewhere between $10,000 and $12,000 that we cover some of that expense. I mean, we could play hardball. I anticipate what Jason's going to say here, and just say they quoted it. They have to. They made their bed. They have to sleep in it. Some of us think that, Tracy's done a good job. And, the paperwork, all the documentation, we're in better shape with Paris and the audit than we have been in past years. So I think on the administrative side, it's right. And we have added stuff to her plate, things that have prolonged or become more complicated than what anyone would have anticipated at the beginning of the year. So that's, so we have the discussion. We'll see next month what this contract looks like. We'll have an opportunity to vote on that. Unless someone else wants to become the executive director, some retired person that has a lot of time.
Don't look at me.
So that's coming up. So I'd like to make a motion, it's appropriate at this point, right? To make a motion to cover some of the shortfall. I'm assuming since it was half a few months ago that it's more than that now. The 10,000 that we started with, some other things came up, so I suggested. I think we talked about 10, and I thought I would extend it to 12. I'd like to make a motion to compensate MRB to come up with the shortfall on the contract. I'd like a motion.
I'll second.
Okay, seconded. Any discussion?
So what's the number?
12 is where we kind of, because some things came up.
Their real number is 20.
Our
Pardon me?
number is probably closer to 27 now.
Okay. What's the initial contract? I don't know.
It was 34,000 for the year.
Yeah. And we recognize that some of that was
Learning curve.
we didn't, some of that was transition, but some of that was like, we just didn't anticipate a few things that we probably should have in the timing. So that's why we're not sitting here saying, pay us the whole 27,000.
And I brought this up. They did not. And I think that's an important distinction. They were going to just say, hey, we gave it a price and we're going to stick with it. But because it came up in a discussion, this was going to be more money next year, that they underbid it, or not with all the understanding of what was going to take. And so then we brought up in our executive that we thought that we should at least compensate for some of it, because they haven't backed off. They haven't said, this is as far as we quoted, and we're going to do less now. They did not. They kept, they played it straight and kept up with the commitment. So that was appreciated, and that's why we're proposing it now.
So they may be able to recoup some of that 15,000 that they're not getting now in their next contract.
You're very sensitive to that, aren't you?
No, I mean, it's good chunk.
I don't think so. We have to, that's part of it.
I would look at it if I were.
We're actually, that's what we're gonna scrutinize. There's gonna be an administrative cost. That's kind of like the monthly day in and day out thing. If we don't have a lot going on, and it would include some soft work, but when we have a project that we introduce, like the GDC project, or a pilot comes before us that becomes an extended thing, there might be, and I think at that point, they would give us a quote.
Yeah.
We would be able to approve that thing above and beyond. It's, talk about transparency, at least we would then have a way of discussing it before. So I don't see it happening again if this process gets locked down.
And I'll say we are not intentionally billing, or we're not intentionally quoting next year in any way to.
It's okay. No, I'm just thinking of the way I used to operate, and we'd have a good client and we would keep going and maybe not tell them everything every instance because I wanted to keep that quiet, but to lose 15 grand is tough. No, that's tough.
Matt Horn is not a consultant at heart, so we figure those things out, and it's not our intention to say like, okay, we're going to bill a bunch more next year to cover losses from this.
Yeah, you just want to be in the mix to get new work.
Yeah, but that being said, we don't want to lose money next year.
Right. Okay, why?
And it appears that
Okay with
it's
it.
going to be at least a year based on what Amy said with.
If not 6 months to a year is what we're looking at. And which is why the structure of the contract's a little different too, is what they're discussing.
To accommodate
Month to month.
But it's not an annual thing per se. It's an annual commitment with a monthly kind of process.
Yeah.
All right.
If things
I'm
transition-
definitely okay with the 12,000.
Okay, well,
It's a good deal.
we have the motion for $12,000. We've seconded and first and second, all in favor, say aye. Any opposed? Areas, okay.
Consistent, I mean.
You're good. Yeah, that's one thing.
No arbitrary decision making here.
Healthy for the board.
All right, we appreciate your work, Tracy, and thank you for the vote. The proposal to support, the motion to support the beautification proposal, and that's here someplace.
Yes.
It's all documented very well. And is it the number 56 or are they going to 60? I thought we mentioned 60.
So we took out 1440 because that was for seasonal labor this year. So the total amount of the ask is 61,870. If you include everything else that's in that proposal. The LDC did approve up to $30,000 yesterday because they had already put in $950 towards some of the seasonal or increasing time for one of their current employees for 2022. And then, so the ask to the IDA would be $30,935 would be the other half. Geneva Growth did consider this to see if they would contribute some of their funds. They decided not to go ahead and contribute. There may be some other partners we can talk to, but we do want to make sure that we can move this forward. On Wednesday, the LDC met and approved up to $30,000 contingent upon the IDA participating. I know last month there was a question about how this all plays together with what the city is doing. So I'm hoping Amy can talk about that.
Yeah, so the city has a separate contract to do some of this work already. We've expanded that contract. So traditionally, our contract with the bid was for support for 2 full-time employees at 35 hours a week. Well, 1 full-time, we've expanded it to 2 full-time employees for year round, and then 2 seasonal employees, 35 hours a week. We continued that contract from the city and then also increased it an additional. With this, it'll increase an additional 2. So there will be 6 employees seasonally. So the city provides 4. And then if this proposal went through, they would have 6. We've also increased funding within our Department of Public Works for additional resources there, including potential contracting work in the first year to bring in additional landscapers, not only to do kind of the initial spring, as well as they did come in during the winter, but also to do a training with bid and with our own staff about how to manage what we have, how that all works. So this goes beyond that into getting into kind of volunteers and how to help volunteers understand how they are incorporated into that. And the bid is taking that So I think this is the initial, how that plays out long-term. Will be, again, that relationship between the city and the business improvement district. The city will be doing much more of the, I don't want to say the deeper stuff, but kind of the planting than the bid is really a maintenance agreement. So they are doing some weeding, doing some of those, but when it comes to determinations on, does something have to change? Big renovation, something like that, that will be DPW. We also put in some funding for some shared tools. We already do that. Obviously, the Department of Public Works has different equipment than the bid has. And so we'll continue anything that needs some of our larger equipment that will be completely on the city side. And the bid will have smaller equipment.
So who's ultimately responsible to oversee that all of this work is actually getting done in the hours, or, is it the city? I mean, who?
For the bid, so your contract is with the Business Improvement District. So anything that you are contracting with would be the responsibility. And we talked a little bit about this at the LDC, is as you develop that contract, whatever that looks like, to ensure that all of these things are being carried out and how you choose to do that. We've developed a contract, we're developing a contract with the bid this year, where it'll be done kind of a quarterly contract to review. Have they hired? Do they have the staff on site? Is the work being done? The equipment, if they're purchasing equipment, there's some of that in ours. Has that been purchased? So that way we're aware of what's being done. I would encourage you guys to do something similar where you're well aware of the seasonal workforce has been hired. They've been able to recruit. They are meeting the needs that you want.
Now, this $60,000 is just, takes us through the end of 2023.
Yes.
The 1 year.
And
Is that enough time for the city to pick it up? I mean, this is a stopgap is the way I'm understanding. This kind of is the bridge.
Yeah. I don't know what it's going to look like in a year from now. I can't say that the 60,000, I can't say that the bid won't come back with another proposal next year. I don't know what they were looking at. Our time frame really, this will be our first year taking it all on. Next year, we may not have the landscaper component and staff may be responsible. It's going to be a trial phase. I'm guessing on most things like this, you're looking at 3 years before it's really yours. There's the learning year, the year you actually do it, and then it is what it is kind of in that third year. So I don't know if we'll come back with another proposal, but that's what we're looking at. How much infusion of funding, and we don't even know if it will be enough city side at this point. There is a lot more to maintain, and we have not increased our staffing by the amount of units.
I will say that this proposal does include also some infrastructure for doing this, some educational infrastructure, some signage, so people can understand what's there and why it's there and why it's important to the ecosystem. Some equipment is in here, so it's a big chunk of it is staffing, but there's also some other infrastructure stuff that will help move things forward into the future. Beyond the staffing, the stopgap staffing piece. My recommendation, similar to kind of what Amy was saying, I talked to Catherine a little bit after our meeting. Their cash flow is such that they're not really ready for a reimbursement situation. But what I might propose is for anything that's not the staffing component and incurred cost, they give us the invoice, we pay the invoice. Done. We know it's going where we said it's going to go. And then for the staffing component, they tell us when they've hired, and then there's a monthly stipend based on that hiring. And then if they would have to notify us if there's some stuff.
And then monthly, then we could get updates of if they're meeting the gates, the goals.
Yeah, and I think if we can hop onto your quarterly reporting, so they only have to do kind of one report.
Yeah,
that probably makes the most sense.
Okay.
Are the employees just for this one season? How do you find those people? Are they expecting to stay on forever and this is a career?
no, they're seasonal employees. They tend to be students a lot of times, transitional workforce, someone looking for a part-time job. I mean, it's different than our seasonal. Some of our seasonals are hoping to get into kind of the city public works, but they've had some transitional. A lot of times seasonals too, maybe students that have gone away to college and are coming home. So you may get them for a few years, but they tend to be transitional.
Okay,
We have enough to propose a motion? Motion to support the proposal, and the proposal is that we would, with the stipulations that Tracy said, maybe monthly disbursements based on reports. Monthly reports could be quarterly. I don't know if it has to be monthly, but depends if, I guess they would, if we're going to pay invoices, then I guess it needs to be monthly. Do you see any problem with that administrative wise? I mean, just kind of monitoring that.
Mostly for Irene,
Yeah.
mostly her.
Um,
problem. All the time in the world.
So, and those would be the stipulation we put on, so that the number on the floor is 30,935. 30,900, that's almost 3,100.
LDC, didn't they make it a solid number?
Yeah, theirs was like 29,985. They made it 30. But you don't have to do that. You can use the actual number. I did the math.
Well, what should our proposal, what number do you think we should put in there?
I mean, I say 30,935. That's what the proposal is for. So that's what I would.
Okay, so the motion is that we support our share of the proposal, the beautification proposal will be 30,935. Okay. And that we would want monthly reports as far as the meeting the goals, and that we would disperse monthly. This amount monthly.
Yeah, I would say incurred costs on non-staffing and monthly disbursements for staffing.
Okay.
Quarterly programmatic.
And quarterly programmatic reports would be my recommendation.
Okay.
These funds are available in our budget, like we have the room for it, right? Great.
Yeah, we have cash, and that's kind of the point. We have a income stream because of the pilots, and the LDC doesn't necessarily have that type of opportunity. Same opportunities we have, so us ponying it up a little bit more, I guess, isn't too problematic for us anyway. Okay, so that's motion. I'd like to
second.
all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Even
Boy.
I would have done 40, but yeah.
He's one of the.
right, you didn't bring that up last time. You didn't think it was enough.
You couldn't, yeah. you
I
couldn't-
won't charge for Milton Park. I won't charge.
Okay, you're not gonna? Good, it's not part of the proposal.
Everything and everything.
I didn't see it written up there. All right.
No.
Okay, motion is passed. Thank you. Motion, okay, we have some Paris documents. Hopefully we can get this. We're kind of running long here.
Yeah. So basically,
Anthony, thank you for your patience, by the way.
basically the Paris reporting is coming due. I don't have an audit draft yet, so there's only certain reports that we can submit thus far. I've included those plus the competence report and the measurement report in your document. Basically, your approval allows me to get the investment report and the procurement report submitted.
Which we already voted on, right?
That's what we're doing today.
Okay.
Is on those reports, and then the audit report and the annual report will have to wait until the audit is complete, but it will allow us to submit something on time.
Okay. So I'd like a motion to submit these documents that Tracy just outlined.
So move.
Rick,
Get him in.
Green second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, so passed, the motion's passed. Thank you, Tracy, for that. I'd like a motion to go into executive session for the proposed acquisition, sale, or lease of real property proposed and pending current litigation.